The last scream of the dead bride. The Suscon Bridge stretched across the misty swamp like an old, withered hand clutching at the remnants of the past. The aged wooden beams creaked even on windless nights, and the water below seemed to harbor more secrets than any legend could ever contain. The elders of the nearby town insisted that no one should stop there, especially after dark. The bridge had become the home of something ancient, something that craved life. Some called it the ghost of the bride. Others spoke of a monstrous creature lurking in the river, pulling everything alive into its depths. But none of that scared Erica. She came out of sheer curiosity. She'd first heard about the Suscon Screamer in a local diner from an elderly waiter who had jokingly warned her not to play with ghosts. Erica loved such stories. She filmed them for her blog, where she collected eerie legends from across the country. "A dead bride, you say?" she asked, jotting notes in her notebook. The waiter leaned closer, as if afraid someone might overhear. "She's there, and anyone who sees her, she'll find you." Erica had simply smiled. She knew how small-town folk loved spinning tales to scare off outsiders, but something in his voice sent a cold shiver down her spine. That same night, she drove to the bridge. Erica parked her old car right in the middle of the bridge. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, and mist swirled around her, alive and restless. She pulled out her camera, set it on a tripod, and hit record. "Well, let's see who's screaming here," she said with a wry smile, adjusting the lens. According to the legend, you had to turn off the engine, place the keys on the roof of the car, and wait. So she did. Minutes passed, then 10. Nothing happened. "So much for the myth, guys," she began, speaking to the camera. But then something changed. The air grew heavy, as if there was suddenly less of it. The mist thickened around her, and from somewhere far off came the faint sound of water splashing. Erica turned, her heart beginning to race. Something was moving behind the car. At first, it was just a blur in the dense fog. Then she saw it, a figure, tall, feminine, wrapped in a long, flowing dress that seemed to ripple like liquid. Erica quickly aimed the camera at the spot. "Who are you?" she called out, trying to sound confident, though her voice trembled. The answer came in the form of a scream, piercing, full of pain and fury. Erica clamped her hands over her ears, but the sound wasn't coming from outside. It was inside her head, burrowing deep like needles into her thoughts. The figure moved closer, and now she could see its face. Pale as marble, with hollow black voids where eyes should have been. The hair was tangled, and the mouth hung open in an eternal scream. Erica bolted for the car, but the door wouldn't open. The camera was still rolling, the tiny red light blinking in the misty darkness. She glanced into the rearview mirror and froze. The ghost was already inside the car. It sat in the back seat, its dress pooling like water across the upholstery. It stared at her and then slowly raised one hand, pointing directly at her. "Are you going to leave me here too?" it whispered, and Erica felt her heart stop. Part 3. The Bridge's Secret. Erica couldn't answer. Her voice caught in her throat as she fumbled with the door, her hands trembling. The ghost leaned closer, and the air around her grew damp and cold. "They all left me," it murmured. "My father, my fiancé, and now, you." Memories she couldn't possibly have known flooded her mind. A young woman in a white dress waiting at the altar. Warm sunlight, smiling faces of guests. And then darkness, rain, the bridge. The woman stood at the edge of the railing, her dress blending with the misty water below. And then she jumped. Finally, Erica broke free and stumbled out of the car. She ran, tripping over the wooden planks of the bridge, but the scream followed her. The fog seemed alive, wrapping around her like a snare. And then she stopped. Something new was in front of her. It wasn't the bride. It was a creature. Its head was enormous, with hollow sockets where eyes might have been, and its webbed claws glistened in the dim light. The creature loomed over her, its presence overwhelming. Erica felt her mind unravel as the world turned to black. The next morning, police found Erica's car abandoned on the bridge. The camera was still inside, recording. On the footage, a foggy blur crept across the frame, growing larger until the screen went dark. The locals whispered once more about the bridge and its victims. But no one knew exactly what Erica had seen. Her body was never recovered. Yet sometimes, on moonless nights, a scream echoes across the bridge. Perhaps it's just the wind, or maybe it's her voice, lost between worlds. The Last Scream of the Dead Bride, Part 2. The bridge stood silent under a slate-gray sky, its wooden beams groaning in the soft wind. Days turned into weeks, but the disappearance of Erica remained unsolved. The locals whispered their warnings more fervently now, their fears feeding the legend. Yet, not everyone was content to let the mystery lie dormant. Nathan hadn't spoken to Erica in months, their last conversation ending in a petty argument over her obsession with ghost stories. When the call came that she was missing, his first reaction was disbelief. But as days passed and the reality of her absence set in, disbelief turned to anger, and anger into a determination that burned through his grief. He found her notes in the trunk of her car, still parked in the police impound. Scribbled between the lines of local legends and sketches of the bridge were cryptic sentences. "She's more than a ghost. She's waiting. Something is under the water." Nathan wasn't a believer in the paranormal. He was an engineer, a man of logic and reason. But when he read the accounts of witnesses who'd heard screams on the bridge, his skepticism wavered. He had to know what happened to his sister. Nathan arrived at the bridge just before dusk. He parked his car at the edge of the road and walked the last 100 feet, the boards beneath his boots creaking ominously. The air was thick, not just with mist, but with a kind of oppressive stillness. He carried a flashlight, a recorder, and a small handheld sonar device he'd borrowed from a friend who fished the nearby waters. If there was anything beneath the river, he would find it. As the first stars began to pierce the evening sky, Nathan set up his equipment. He turned on the recorder and spoke, his voice steady despite the growing unease in his chest. "This is Nathan Walker. I'm here to investigate the disappearance of my sister, Erica. If anyone or anything can hear me, I just want answers." The bridge responded with silence. Nathan sighed, frustrated. "Maybe this was a mistake," he muttered, stepping closer to the railing to deploy the sonar device into the water below. That's when he heard it, a faint splash, as if something enormous stirred beneath the surface. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end as he scanned the water with his flashlight. For a moment, it seemed calm, just dark ripples shifting in the weak light. But then, from the corner of his eye, he saw movement, a pale hand. Nathan stumbled back, his flashlight trembling in his hand. The hand wasn't reaching for him, it simply floated, barely visible beneath the surface. He leaned closer, against his better judgment, and the water erupted. She rose from the depths slowly, her soaked wedding gown clinging to her gaunt frame. Her face was obscured by strands of matted hair, but her hollow eyes found his immediately. "Why are you here?" Her voice was wet, gurgling, as if her lungs were filled with water. Nathan froze, his heart hammering in his chest, but then something in him, a primal instinct, a brother's desperation, forced him to answer. "I'm looking for Erica, my sister. Do you know where she is?" The bride tilted her head, her lips curling into a sorrowful smile. "She came to me, just like you." Nathan's pulse quickened. "What do you mean? What did you do to her?" The bride floated closer, her pale hand reaching out toward him. He stumbled back, but her words held him in place like chains. "It wasn't me. she whispered. "It's never me. I only call them. The water takes them." Before he could process her words, the mist around him thickened, and with it came a sound, a deep, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate the very air. The bride's form flickered, her face contorting into something inhuman before she vanished into the fog. Nathan's flashlight flickered, its beam cutting through the dense fog just enough for him to see the surface of the water. It wasn't calm anymore. Massive ripples expanded outward, as if something enormous was circling beneath. The growling grew louder, and then the boards beneath his feet began to shake. Nathan grabbed his sonar device, the screen flickering to life. At first, it displayed static, but then he saw it, a massive shape, larger than any creature he'd ever seen, slowly rising toward the surface. The mist parted just enough for him to see it. Its head broke the water first, its eyes two black voids that seemed to pull the light from the world. Its mouth was wide, filled with jagged, uneven teeth, and webbed claws the size of car tires gripped the edge of the bridge. Nathan stumbled backward, the sonar device slipping from his grasp and crashing into the boards. The creature roared, its sound deafening, primal, and filled with rage. Nathan scrambled toward his car, but the bridge trembled violently as the creature hauled itself farther out of the water. He turned to face it, clutching the flashlight like a weapon, though he knew it was useless. "You're the one," a voice echoed in his head, though the creature didn't move its mouth. The one who defied her call. Nathan didn't understand. Her call? The bride? What are you talking about? The creature roared again, and for a brief moment, Nathan thought he saw something within its maw. A faint light, a figure. Erica. She was trapped, her face frozen in terror, her hand reaching out as if begging for help. Nathan's heart broke, but the creature lunged before he could react. The car was found days later, abandoned on the bridge. Just like before, the police found no trace of Nathan, but his recorder remained, its final minutes capturing the roar of something otherworldly, followed by a scream. Locals say the bridge is louder now. The screams come more often, sometimes overlapping, as if the bride's sorrow has been joined by the agony of others. And on some nights, if you stand at the edge of the bridge and listen closely, you can hear a voice, a man's voice, calling out a name. "Erica,